So I wanted to get this channel uh, back started up and make some general comments as to what's going on politically because I want to get back into the swing of things in the political world. This channel's original purpose was, for me to talk about politics and make political commentary, and I want to bring the channel back into focus on that. But I haven't really been making videos, and I just basically I've gone through a couple of laptops since I stopped, for work and study. So I stopped um, working on my PC, but my PC is so old that I can't really make videos on it. And my laptop just isn't being cooperative right now. So um, I'm just going to talk about a few things on my phone. And I might have to do this for 3 or 4 videos. And then later on in the future, hopefully I'll get the wherewithal to be able to come up with a better setup because my laptop's camera is just not with it, and I'm gonna mess with it tomorrow. But I wanted to get this video done tonight. I'm doing this at night. Okay, so um, the real reason that I want to get the channel started up again is because I think the situation that we find ourselves in, for those of us who are well left of center, has just been catastrophic. Meaning that, in my view, I think the left has been effectively crushed. If you're watching this, there were a few right wingers who found my channel, and I think they ended up blocking me. I don't know if it's because I'm persistent or whatever, but if you're watching this and you're a right winger, then you should be happy because that's, after all, what you want, right? I mean, you want the left to go away, and that's basically what happened. I mean, in the language of Democrats, there was a civil war going on within the Democratic Party, and I've worked for the Democrats. I've done about 5 or 6 local campaigns, small peanut stuff, but I got to see what the inside of these offices are like, within the Democratic Party. And I can tell you that it's a mess, and I hope to be commenting on that in the future. But there was a reason why there was a civil war in the party, because for the longest time, going back about 40, nearly 50 years, the corporate wing of the party basically crushed the other side and kept it down. What some people call the liberal wing or the progressive wing, and some people call the socialist wing, people that favor social democracy. And this was a project that was done on purpose. In the purpose of the Democratic Party, speaking of purpose, um, the purpose has always been to forestall or to stop left populism. That's the purpose of the Democratic Party. It just so happens that when the corporate Democrats took over, a lot of what isn't really left populism, a lot of stuff which is just plain liberalism, also got labeled as left populism. So, on top of the stuff that's kind of borderline socialism, and even or stuff that is the New Deal, not only was that basically marginalized, but a lot of other stuff which is simply normal liberal things, um, like regulation, like doing something about clean water. I mean, just very basic things got swept aside and brushed under the rug. And that's why I happen to think somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who I don't really like, is kind of, at least a more, in terms of expressed feeling, a little bit more of a consistent liberal. She's an, there are many reasons why I don't like her, but I just want to draw your attention to that. Like, even she's unacceptable to the corporate wing of the party, what you might call the neoliberal wing of the party. She's unacceptable to Wall Street. She's unacceptable to the ruling class. I personally have my problems with her, but that's for another video. Anyway, so sometime between Super Tuesday and um, this bailout package that was passed, the left basically got crushed or destroyed. After Super Tuesday, it became obvious that Bernie Sanders was not going to be the nominee, that the progressives were going to lose. They were going to lose the battle with the Democratic Party. When we found out through a Politico article that AOC was not going to pursue her anti-corporate caucus, and then there was a bailout that was passed, and then the last thing was Bernie Sanders dropping out. But by then, it's pretty evident that there's no organized left in the United States, and the situation is even more dire than that. I mean, truthout.org, which is a really good publication, online publication, they no longer exist because it turns out that basically they were owned by an heiress. KPFK, which is my local branch, but there are others. I'm in the Pacifica Radio Network. I've been listening to them, and they're not what they used to be. Clearly, Mother Jones has become Clintonite. The Nation magazine is chicken. I mean, the labor unions are a shadow of what they used to be. Maybe only the nurses union and a few other unions are actively representing the working class. Most of them have been taken over by people who are basically the suits, managers, people in the management class, which you might call bourgeois. It is a gigantic mess. I mean, there is no organized left anymore. I mean, there's basically disparate islands, people who are, let's say, people who are professional protesters who protest police violence, but they don't do much besides that. People who just do teach-ins at universities, like the communists. People who are pretend left, like the people who are in the nonprofits. That might be harsh for some people, but that's what I think. I think if you're in a nonprofit and you might be thinking, oh, I'm doing something good, like in the Sierra Club, or there's many nonprofits that do work. Unless you're doing something directly related to something like you're in a clinic or something like that, where you give people health care or medication, then I just think you're deceiving yourself. I think that the left basically doesn't exist. It's not organized. There's no solidarity. So a lot of people from the unions are not trusted, sometimes justifiably, but they're not trusted by other people on the left. There's an ideological divide, and there's an ethnic divide. Coming from Southern California like I do, I can tell you, well, I can give you specifics at another time, but there's no communication between white lefties and at least not enough, and Latino lefties, and there isn't an assemblage of shared interests. And the Democratic Party, of course, which is supposed to do something about all these issues, does not represent the left even a little bit. And because of things like what happened to AOC with the collapse of the anti-corporate caucus, and I mean, I guess she did not vote for the bailout, but several of her colleagues did. I don't know what the vote tally is, but Ilhan Omar went on Democracy Now! To defend the bailout in some way, saying there's checks and balances in it. So I feel confident in saying that probably Ayanna Pressley voted for it. Bernie supported it. So it's just, and what's in the bailout package besides the stuff that you've heard about, which is handing, I don't know, $4 trillion in corporate subsidies or whatever it is, and $500 billion to Donald Trump, which he gets to dispose of any way he wants, effectively. There's also um, property tax property tax breaks for the rich, so they can take more off their taxes based on their property depreciation, which is in large measure how you get this control of property, and this basically the rentier class is sucking money from the working class and taking it off their taxes. That's basically what's happening. And there are other problems with the bill related to that. I mean, one of the recurring themes in our society is fire. That's finance, insurance, and real estate. And what real estate plans to do with this bailout is the real estate interests and the equity firms that are going to buy even more property. They're going to take this money, they're going to use it to buy depreciated property, and evict people and then raise the rents. And that's what's going to happen. Uh, and it's going to be facilitated by real estate tax breaks, and it's going to be facilitated by them having lots of money. And I know for a fact that there are lots of buyers out there waiting for the price to go down so they can use their bailout money to buy these homes and basically raise the rents. It's going to make a lot of people homeless. And, it's a problem. It's a problem when you have landlords that are basically saying, we don't mind evicting people even in a time of need like this, because if I don't pay my mortgage, since a lot of these landlords have mortgages on their property that they own to the bank, they say stuff like, hey, I don't want to go on I don't want a modification of my loan, because if I do that, I will lose my preferred borrower status. So I'd rather evict people. And the reason for that is because I need my preferred borrower status in order to buy more property, because property values are going to go down, so I'm going to get to buy. And that's basically what the upper 5% of the economy is looking forward to, a consolidation of the real estate markets with more evictions, with rents going up. So at the end of this, there's going to be a depreciation, or a price lowering period, or prices are going to go down, and then when they go back up, they're going to be left holding all the cards, and then the rents are going to go up. And that's their plan. It's basically to be part of the final, not last man, but the final group standing. And what you're going to see is more and more property owned by more and more corporations, these equity firms, and by large landlords. I mean, when I was young, when I was a kid, we had a lot of local landlords, a lot of people who maybe they owned a bar. They worked for 20 years, 20, 25 years to buy a property, and they would become landlords, and they'd be small landlords. I think it's going to be harder and harder for those people to compete. And you've seen the growth of conglomerations of these equity firms, and they basically end up owning all kinds of different properties, but they're faceless. They just hire employees to do everything. And a lot of times they get to be, like, I think Blackstone, for example, they get to be slumlords and earn millions of dollars and use their federal connections to get out from any trouble they might find themselves in. So these are all considered. I mean, what I'm saying is that this bailout is going to hurt people and make people homeless. That's what I'm saying. And the left has been caught totally flat-footed on this, and it because of the combination of things like the defeat in South Carolina, Bernie's defeat, and Super Tuesday, and everything just culminating in the defeat of the anti-corporate caucus and the bailout. It's actually revealed the central truth, which is that the plan and the desire to actually change things in the Democratic Party has failed. And part of that is the establishment, part of that is the media, and maybe I hope to be exploring some of these topics on this channel. But the other part of it, I think, falls squarely on the shoulders of voters. Because, I mean, I left the Democratic Party primarily for that reason. It wasn't just the establishment, it was the realization that the voters themselves who are in the Democratic Party are opposed to progress. And anytime you see somebody like Cuellar winning in Texas, uh, and, according to Nate Silver, this congressman votes with Donald Trump 75% of the time, but it's at least 70% of the time. So he was supported by Nancy Pelosi, endorsed by Nancy Pelosi. Just think about that for a second. So Nancy Pelosi supported a guy in Texas who was anti-choice, who is anti-choice, who votes with Donald Trump 75% of the time. Right? And this comes after she facilitated the USMCA vote. She gave him more money for his military and a 6-month extension on the Patriot Act. And, those are horrible things. And that came after, that was on Super Tuesday, that came after the South Carolina debacle. I can't speak too much. I mean, I may make another video on my opinion on the black voters, but I have to say that it's a little, shall we say, disappointing that black people basically decided to not have hope. I mean, that's what their vote was. I either don't like Bernie, and they've had plenty of time to get used to Bernie. I either don't like Bernie, I think was the rationale, or I just don't believe in Bernie. And when you add that up, plus my realization, I mean, you add it up with my realization that I have 5 elected representatives. One, I don't know what the hell he does. He's a state senator. But the other 4, all of them actually are Democrats. And I may do something about this, but because I just don't agree with what they do. I don't think they represent me. I don't think they've ever done anything for me. I don't think they are good for the party. I don't think they know what they're doing. And they don't seem to care about the future. And those are my elected representatives and my local 2 representatives to the legislature, and my 3 to Congress, my 2 senators and my congressman. They're all Democrats, and none of them have shown any propensity for anything new or interesting, or who they don't represent me at all. So that's why I left the party, and that's why I think that, I mean, the left is destroyed because the left was really relying on leadership from elected Democrats. And I think if we've learned anything is that even AOC, who at times I admire, she's just not in a position to lead the left. I mean, she just isn't. And it's true that she voted against the bailout, but at the same time, she has shown a propensity to work with the establishment, work with Nancy Pelosi, and she's not going to challenge incumbents. She's not going to back anti-incumbent progressives. And she's not forming that caucus I keep talking about, which I think is absolutely crucial and necessary. We have to form some kind of progressive caucus to stand up to corporations. Anyway, that's my little spiel, which I think kind of encapsulates why I think the left has collapsed. Well, there's probably more to say about that, and and why I'm out of the Democratic Party, because I can't be in a party that is sort of part of the death cult in its own way. It is part of the death cult, and it doesn't oppose the other party substantially enough. And when people talk about the Republicans and they complain about the Republicans, it almost always is because of some seeds that were already sown by Democrats, and almost always related to either Democrats losing an argument or basically creating the situation for Republicans to exploit. So All right, I'm nearing about 20 minutes, so that's it for now, and I'll see you on the next one. So take it easy until then.